All right. And Karen, I should make sure that I set the record straight and proper on all that. It wasn't a pair of fingernail clippers. It was a pair of fingernail scissors, little, those little tiny scissor things. But it took ages. I just sat there on a footstool as she cut my hair. I felt much like Samson, but it turned out all right. Everything was fine. She was correct. She had a very violent temper. I remember one time I was driving in the car with her father, and we were heading to a family gathering, and he said, "Gardner, so-and-so can be explosive at times." I was like, "Oh," he goes, "but there's value in her." I was like, "Okay, great. This is going to be fun." Irish and Italian, so it was quite a combo there. So all right, so before we get started on the major news stories, I just want to let you know, before we close off the show tonight, let me give you a little commiseration. We're going to close off a little hot to hot, as they might say, about snowfall on the ground and whether or not they take care of the roads the way that you remember they used to take care of the roads when you were a kid. Because you might be like me, thinking something bad has happened over the years. And I think that is exactly the case. Now let's get into the badness from Washington, D.C., as they use our money to kill more people. And then they lie about it. They flip-flop about it. They offer bogus so-called rationales. And then the Congress critters, they let it all slide. They allow the war crimes. They disregard their U.S. Constitution. Is con the operative syllable there? They disregard the economic hardship at home. Yeah, let's take a look at some of these issues. First off, let's check this out. This coming from that wonderful humanitarian, Benjamin Netanyahu, who explained to us just what the difference is between the great angelic Zionist occupying genocide state and the Iranians who are defending themselves.
So here's the difference between us. These mass murderers in Tehran, they target civilians. We in Israel and America target the mass terrorists.
Did you get that? The Iranians target civilians. That's why 176 girls were killed Saturday morning by the Israeli-American nexus, because of the Iranians targeting civilians. You see how that works? I do. I get it. It's totally, you know, that Superman from Bizarro World had like the backwards S. I think this might be the case for Benjamin Netanyahu.
That's a nutshell of the difference. And we have to protect our world against these people.
Benjamin Netanyahu claims that Israel and the U.S. only target terrorists as he turns a blind eye to the 175 people killed at an Iranian girls' elementary school. Iran questions the motive behind that attack.
They chose the first strikes very deliberately. They killed the leader of our country at his workplace with his family. They killed our children in Manab with 2 missiles. Why did they fire 2 missiles? 175 beautiful Iranian angels. What was their crime?
Yeah, what was their crime? Oh, that's right. Hamas, you know, the Israelis consider members of Hamas to be toddlers. Toddlers are members of Hamas. Don't forget, they don't want people to grow up. They're sort of like, hey, you know what? Why don't you remain in a perpetual never-neverland state? We'll just kill you at the age of, 3. And we'll say that you were a potential Hamas member, or you were a potential terrorist, just minding your own business in one of the oldest nations in the world, Persia, otherwise known as Iran. Let's talk about the Liberty Conspiracy News Notes with that as our opening. Special report, U.S.-Israeli war crimes, the latest from Iran. Remember, in order to excuse naked aggression, Marco Rubio claimed we moved proactively in a defensive way. Yeah. You know how that is, right? It gives you complete permission to attack people. I attacked you because I was defending. See? Wait, what? Yes, absolutely. Here's Dave DeCamp, the mighty one of antiwar.com. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Monday said that the U.S. launched a war against Iran without any declaration of war, of course, so they should all be impeached and put in prison because Israel was planning to attack. An admission that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu steered the U.S. into the conflict. Interesting. It was abundantly clear, Rubio told reporters, that if Iran came under attack by anyone, as we mentioned yesterday, the United States, Israel, or anyone, they were going to respond against the United States, Rubio told reporters. Oh, okay. You mean those people in the bases around Iran? Because it's not like they're going to launch missiles against the United States or fly jets into the United States. You mean those bases that you put around Iran to threaten Iran and from which you've already lobbed attacks and helped assassinate people. Is that it? I don't know. I'm just wondering. I'm wondering where the concept of defense ever comes into this picture. Where on this stage, let's pull this curtain up here. Are there any players named defense on this? I don't think so. I don't think so. I know this is an absurdist dark comedy. It's Kafkaesque. It's something the Dadaist movement might have gone for in Germany in the 1920s, but I don't see any defense here, Marco. Here's a little more. If we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would have suffered much higher casualties. You mean in those bases that aren't supposed to be there for the soldiers who should know better? And so the president made the very wise decision. You see, this is where the problem arises for many people who actually want to bother maybe teaching their kids about the constitutional system or doing justice, at least, to the sacrifice of the people of the Revolutionary era. Even though the Constitution was a usurpation of the Articles of Confederation, we can admit to the fact that the Constitution has a requirement that only Congress can declare war. But evidently, some people don't seem to grasp that. We'll give you an example of one of those people, a man named Pags. You might be familiar with Joe Pags. We'll show you that in just a second. It's incredible. How can anybody function this way? The president can just go to action. What is he, like Stretch Armstrong? What do you mean go to action? So, yeah, Daniel McAdams and Ron Paul noticed that many other fatuous human balloons, including Speaker Johnson, said similar things. So let's check this out from Ron Paul and Daniel McAdams.
Ways. Here's another way that he said it yesterday in the same press conference. Let's listen to him explain it.
There absolutely was an imminent threat, and the imminent threat was that we knew that if Iran was attacked,
make sure you do the clicker finger, everybody. It's very important.
And we believed they would be attacked, that they would immediately come after us. And we were not going to sit there and absorb a blow before we responded, because the Department of War assessed that if we did that, if we waited for them to hit us first after they were attacked, and by someone else, Israel attacked them, they hit us first, and we waited for them to hit us, we would suffer more casualties and more deaths.
Now, let me just ask you, that place is filled with people. You can see them racing down the stairs to get this on camera. Did any single person ask him, what does that so-called rationale, regardless of whether it holds any water at all, which it doesn't, how about a declaration of war from Congress? How does that pertain to the fact that you completely breached your oath to the Constitution and you should be out of office? Not a single person in that chamber, and I know exactly where that is, not a single person asked that.
We went proactively in a defensive way to prevent them from inflicting higher damage. Had we not done so,
proactively in a defensive way. Talk about tying yourself up in pretzels. Now, here's one comment about it, Dr. Paul. I never thought that I would be featuring Matt Walsh on the show. I've got a lot of problems with him. He's on the Daily Wire. That's where a lot of the neocons are. But he's actually, I think, nervous. If you put up that next clip, this is Matt Walsh, very right-wing, very, very pro-Trump. Matt Walsh is concerned. He said about this admission by Rubio, so he's flat out telling us that we're in a war with Iran because Israel forced our hand. This is basically the worst possible thing he could have said.
Now, pause it there. We'll go to Mike Johnson in just a minute. And I've got a good comment here that adds to things beautifully. Do Not Follow says, what are your thoughts on the Q crowd claiming that the War Powers Resolution of 1973 allows this? Great question. And this is that point that people often bring up. Well, it's legal. And of course, people don't distinguish between statute and constitution. Very clearly, the War Powers Act is not constitutional. There's nothing in the Constitution that says Congress shall declare war unless the president wants to use the soldiers for 90 days and then just inform Congress. Again, and you and I, we went to the same high school, right? We know that you would have conversations maybe with students and teachers, and maybe Mr. Hanchett might have brought it up. He would be the one that would be pretty strict on the Constitution to say, if they think that the president's got to act super, super fast, he doesn't have the power in the Constitution. So what's the answer? The answer is you amend the Constitution. That's why they put the amendment process there. If you think there's something lacking, if you think it's too strong and needs to be watered down, you can adjust it. You put in the amendment process. Now, again, as an anarchist, as you know, they're including me in their process, and I don't want to be included in their process. They're assuming power over me. Well, we passed the amendment process. Does that make it any more valid over me if I don't want to be included? No, it doesn't. But as far as their rules and what they put forward for the big show that they're going to have every theatrical show that they put on, that is very clear. And it's incredible that people bring that up. Well, it's a War Powers Resolution. So what, right? That's like saying, well, even though I stabbed you, let me look at the brand of knife this is. No, it's the stabbing that's the bad part. You just look at it's a distraction. It's utterly ridiculous. So let me show you the amazingly absurd Mike Johnson here, because and I want to show you a couple other people, because this is an example of the way these people dance around. He's, thank you, man. He says, thanks for the reply to that question. Much appreciated. Yeah, man, it gives me an opportunity to bring it up, and that's why when people talk about the immigration stuff, again, these are people who vote for the offices that are created by the Constitution. And yet they refer to statutes that clearly have they're not even in any ballpark connected to the Constitution. Not at all. They're not even in the same city or on the same planet. They're statutes. They have nothing to do with whether the Constitution was amended to allow the feds to handle immigration. And it wasn't. It's very obvious. So the same thing applies there. It'd be like saying you can have 8,000 members of Congress. Go on in there. It would be like you saying I can be president today. It doesn't matter how many people say it unless they amend the Constitution to allow it. That's, again, on their rule system. Let's go now to Daniel McAdams, because they've got this from Mr. Cotton and a few others.
Video said, if we find that next video clip here, and I know I got you running ragged back there, but here's Tom Cotton saying the same thing, Dr. Paul.
Israel faced an existential risk, and they were prepared to strike Iran alone. If that happened, Iran was very likely to target our troops. That may address the question of why now. Why not 2 weeks ago? Why not 2 months from now? The president, though, did not want to put our troops in harm's way. Israel.
So you notice how he frames the question. That might frame the question of, don't pay attention to the fact that he just breached the Constitution. Should he have broken the Constitution now or a few weeks from now? You see the way they do it. I'm going to hit you. It's not whether it's right or wrong to hit you. It's, am I going to hit you now and how hard? How many people am I going to kill? We're assuming that I can just kill them.
So Israel drove us into this war. Now go to this, not only him, it's the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Put him up next. Now, before you play it, I want to read the comment on top if you can. This is, if you were tasked with creating the worst public explanation for attacking Iran, you could not possibly come up with something as politically toxic to all sides as, quote, we had to do it because Israel said so. That's Max Burns who wrote it. And in case you think that's being exaggerated, listen to Mike Johnson in his own words, basically saying the same thing. You might want to put that in to hear what Speaker Johnson has to say, Dr.
To me, the most critical point is that this was a defensive measure, a defensive operation. And why?
It was a defensive offense. You see?
Is that? I took some notes, and this is not classified, so I'll tell you what I think is important. Israel was determined to act in their own defense here, with or without American support. Why? Because Israel faced what they deemed to be an existential threat.
So let's just get that straight. The illegitimate occupation, genocide, creation state of Israel was perfectly willing to overtly engage and initiate aggression against a foreign nation state for its own defense. You see, again, it's the same template. He's just repeating it. And wait till you see where he gets to the point of exquisite intelligence. These people are perverse. They're sick.
Iran was building missiles at a radical and a rapid clip to the point where our allies in the region could not keep up. As you know, Iran has long vowed to take out Israel, wipe it off the map, and they have long seen that as a critical threat to their very existence. Because Israel was determined to act with or without the U.S., our commander-in-chief and the administration and the officials I just named had a very difficult decision to make. They had to evaluate the threats to the U.S.
So finally, just to wrap this up, first of all, that's not Iran's intention. They would like to see some sort of resolution for the Palestinians, and they supported the Palestinians, and Israel shouldn't be there in the first place. That land should belong to the Palestinians and their families. But where does one get to the point where some president sees trouble for other countries in the world, and that president, without any connection to the U.S. Constitution he swore to uphold, the very thing that creates the office of the president in the first place, says, well, I've got a difficult decision to make. Do I act this way or this way? No, it should be fairly simple. Have they declared war? No. Then you're going to sit there and do nothing. That's what happens.
To our troops, to our installations, to our assets in the region and beyond. And they determined, because of the exquisite intelligence that we had, that if Israel fired upon Iran and took action against Iran to take out the missiles, then they would have immediately retaliated against U.S. personnel and assets. We have
you admit it.
They say his analysis was right, and I would say, wow, that to me sounds like, why don't we just go home?
Yeah,
exactly. Ron Paul's like, well, why are they there? Why are they circling Iran? It's so stupid. Quick update on what's been going on the ground in Iran, and then we're going to get Eric Peters in to cover a big one over at his website. And I want to get Eric's opinion on a couple of these other breaking stories so we can provide my thoughts, his thoughts together, and your thoughts. We're going to go back to the news notes. As you can see here, I've got some information from Tucker Carlson about the Israeli war crimes and so on. But I noted this, and this is some of the latest, up-to-datest of what's been going on in Iran. In the aftermath of the first killings of hundreds of innocent children, adults, and the murder of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and many in his family, the functional Iranian government operates smoothly under the Iranian constitution's formula for defense. Ayatollah Alreza Arafi, president of Islamic seminaries in Iran, has been appointed to the Interim Leadership Council, or Temporary Leadership Council, a three-member body that currently serves as the de facto collective head of state in Iran. It was established on March 1st. The council temporarily assumes the duties and powers of the supreme leader until the Assembly of Experts, an 88-member clerical body, selects and appoints a permanent successor. The arrangement is in Article 111 of Iran's constitution, which outlines procedures for a vacancy in the supreme leadership to ensure continuity of governance. There's a term we don't like here in the U.S. for sure. Here is the current three-man panel. One, you've got Masoud Pezeshkian, the current president of Iran, generally viewed as a moderate. Then Ghulam Hossein Mohseni Ejei, the chief justice from their judicial side. Then there's that Ayatollah I mentioned, Ayatollah Arafi. He's a senior cleric. He is also a lawyer. He's a jurist from the Guardian Council and reportedly is selected representative for the role. Now, I had heard, and you'll see in parentheses, I had heard that he is a person who supports developing a nuclear weapon now as opposed to the old Ayatollah, but I did some research on it and I have not found any evidence to support that claim. So here you go. This is the Ayatollah Arafi. new IRGC chief, the men running Iran now. Now, what I want to mention to you also, at this time, the death toll in Iran stands at approximately 787, with 168, mostly children, killed in last Sunday's, now I think it's 176, U.S. slaughter bombing in the Shajere Tabi, or similar spelling, girls' elementary school in Minab, Hormozgan province. Marco Rubio claimed that the U.S. attacked Iran because Israel was going to attack Iran, of course. He also claimed that, get this, we can't notify 535 members of Congress. Congress can vote on whatever they want, but there's no law that requires us to do that. So people said, why didn't you notify Congress you were going to do this? Well, we can't notify all the 535 members. Again, they're operating on a faulty assumption, which is that the government of inside the executive branch can just do this as long as they notify people. Again, we go back to the point brought up by Do Not Follow. Utterly fatuous disregard for the Constitution, which has only one thing: declaration of war against a nation state and letters of marque and reprisal against people who are non-uniform members of something that's not associated with a nation state. And then the president can hire mercenaries. That's all. That's all. There's nothing else. As many dances as they want to do, they can't come up with some tribal kabuki thing that can create something else. They've got to amend their lovely Constitution. Now, the other thing I want to mention is that meeting place where they were getting together, the Israelis and the United States hit that. And I also want to mention that as Alberto Gonzalez brought up in 2002, Ron Paul was very heroic pushing back against George W. Bush when Alberto Gonzalez left the White House in 2002 to ask Congress not to pass a declaration of war, which Ron Paul had brought up, even though he opposed the action in the Middle East the United States would take, but to pass a so-called authorization to use military force. This is a distinction that needs to be brought up, just like the senators who courageously said to the military, you don't have to follow illegal orders, but water down what is actually the standard. So if someone says you need to get authorization from Congress, they too are deceiving people. It's not authorization from Congress. It's a declaration of war from Congress. That's different. Authorization to use military force was an open-ended thing that lasted more than a decade, allowed them to go into multiple countries. A declaration of war cites the countries, the nation states, and that's it. It's very important. Now, I'll note this. Curiously, Rubio is not alone in his criminal deception. Justin Amash had to remind talk show host Joe Pags about this fundamental concept, a declaration of war. As Justin says, this might be the most basic concept in the entire Constitution. The framers granted Congress the power to declare war. To declare meant to commence war, to put the country in a state of war and activate the commander-in-chief to take offensive action. And as I noted, it's a capital W, because you're not supposed to operate in certain ways under a declaration of war. You're not supposed to kill innocent people. You're not supposed to seize people's private property. Of course, many marauders would do that. Draft language had granted Congress the power to make war, but the framers were concerned that such phrasing would prohibit the president even from taking defensive action without Congress's permission. They amended the language to ensure that the president could repel sudden attacks while preserving Congress's authority to initiate war. Duh. Unbelievable. It's incredible. It's incredible. Well, my friends, it's time. We are going to be joined and get commentary on this and many other things by none other than Eric Peters. And I want to get Eric Peters' thoughts about the roadways, because we'll talk about that towards the end. But I want to give him a big, big hello, and I want to welcome everybody. Please share the links. Let everybody know that Eric is on his way as we go Vulcan Mind Melt on Liberty Conspiracy.